Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. But I also love to find little nuggets out there to bring to you to help you land that perfect job or to help you find the job of your dreams. So today on the show, I'd like to welcome Matthew Warzel, a certified resume writing expert with over 15 years in human resources and career advancement techniques. He manages MJW Careers and provides assistance to companies in transition from downsizes to buyouts, as well as individual job seekers needing to advance their career. Matt fashions a resume that allows employers to review the applicant's assets while highlighting his or her accomplishments, showcasing impacts on the employer's bottom lines using quantitative verbiage, and maintaining brevity, which I do not. Thanks for joining us today, Matthew.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Casey. I'm excited.
I am too. And you know, it's interesting. We've had kind of a theme here lately of certified resume writers, and each one of you, I think, brings a little something different to the table, a little knowledge nugget to share with our audience, whether you're a candidate or whether even you're a hiring manager, maybe a new hiring manager looking at resumes for the first time, right? So, but before we get into all that, my main goal in life is to teach everyone how to network. So how did we get connected?
I actually filled out one of your forms. I had seen an episode or a clip, and I personally have it as part of my marketing strategy for small business to reach out to folks that have nice shows, nice podcasts out there to present to the audiences. So anytime I see someone like yourself that does quality work, but also has consistent kind of platform like this, I try to put the two together and then figure out how I can access the person and send them over a nice little cold message, which I did through your website, which was really convenient given that a lot of times you got to scurry around for emails and things. So I always enjoy when the career experts or just thought leaders in general have it for themselves on the website to be able to, people like me who have an intent to try to get on the show. So I went through the website, the old fashioned way, or I guess it's maybe new fashioned.
Maybe so, but I mean, I think there's a very valuable lesson here to be learned. It's that you did the homework, you've identified the person you wanted to talk to, and you followed up with an email. And it was a very personalized email. I could tell it wasn't just some form email that you had some bot sending to every podcast on the planet. It was very well intentioned. So I really appreciated that, which is why I reached out to you. And I was just like, let's have a conversation, see if this is something we want to pursue. But also, I think the other thing that this illustrates is, not being afraid to hit the send button.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Never. I mean, even when you're cold messaging, if you job seekers out there trying to cold message recruiters or hiring managers, all they could do is ignore you. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, right? So just go for it. And as long as you're presenting them with something of use and not an ask, try to offer a give up front and be someone who's essentially just trying to land maybe like an informational interview session or some sort of quick little, insight into their process or their world that you're trying to, learn more about. That kind of stuff, getting people to talk about themselves is not hard. It's you got to be a little strategic in how you approach people. You can't go in there, gunning everybody down as fast as you can, and whoever can help you is going to spend time away from their work to help a stranger. It doesn't work that way. You got to build some relationships.
And what you just said there was so key. You have to build those relationships. I tell you, and I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but the one thing that will annoy me more than anything on LinkedIn is poor LinkedIn etiquette. And by that, I mean somebody that connects with me and then immediately sends me, hey, I sell insurance. I know you need some. I see that you do this, blah, blah, blah. Here's my calendar link. Find some time. What?
Right.
No, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
if somebody
Absolutely.
hits me like that immediately, as soon as I connect with them, I immediately disconnect because I don't want to see because I know there's going to be a barrage falling when I don't answer, right? And I don't have time for that.
I do the same. It's an easy way to filter out people you've kind of let through, unintentional, however you end up accepting things these days. It's a good way to filter them out if that's all they're hitting you up with. And I have plenty of those people constantly, almost every day.
Do you think it ever works?
It worked once for me. I'm going through a marketing program right now. I guess because she was, and it took every bit of a few months probably. I kept removing her invites for events, LinkedIn events, and then eventually I just got this testimonial of one of her clients, and they touched all the right buttons, and then I ended up going into a wormhole of like 10-hour testimonials, 10 1-hour testimonials, and I was like, because it was like a $5,000 marketing
Right.
expense, so I really went through the ringer, and all of it just was speaking my language of what I'm struggling with. So it got me. I had one get me.
But still, I like the fact that they threw in the testimonial because I think that's huge, right?
Yes. Yes, that gives you that clout, I think, because especially if they're relevant and speaking of my pain points as the consumer.
Exactly, exactly. Okay. So let's get to our audience and what they want to know about resumes. I actually just had so we sponsor a young executive initiative, and I help them find speakers for we call them the happy educational hours. You can get them to come and sit down and listen if you give them booze. So,
Heck yeah.
so we have happy educational hours, and I was really surprised because one of them, I mean, they were like, at the board meeting, they were like, we really need like a resume writer, somebody to teach us how to write our resumes because these are, kids just starting out in their career. And I'm like, I really didn't think that would be interesting to you. And so we have a speaker coming to our August meeting that's a certified resume writer that's local. So that's going to be that's what they asked for. So that's what they're getting. So, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's good information. You need to know what goes on these resumes. It's important.
absolutely. So what few items are essential for job seekers to include in their CVs or resumes, according to Matthew?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, good segue. I mean, that's kind of right in my wheelhouse. So I always kind of start off by saying, you want one that's compliant with the robots, the ATS, and I like when people post online like ATSs are. Don't listen to this and don't listen to that. I mean, look, these things exist. There's software that helps recruiters cut down on wasted time, helps streamline their productivity, and helps store their pipeline of people. And so you have to kind of be mindful that it makes sense. Some resumes that are, I mean, ones that you see that are literally like pictures on a PDF. There's no way this software is going to be that sophisticated to copy and paste that information into their own in-house, ATS. So you got to have it where it's very clean and concise so it can copy and paste from this to that, So I always like to say just keep it very linear, meaning, right down the page without, columns and borders and charts and graphs. If you need that kind of resume, this is a kind of one-off sidebar, but if you're like a graphic designer, just use a professional resume for applications online and then add your infographic as an addendum with your cover letter. So then if they want to see some of the creativity, you have it available. But I always say first, just have one that's clean, not too much bells and whistles. But because it looks good then visually, right, to the human eyeballs once you get past the robots. So you got to make sure that it looks good too a little bit. That's why there's some certain templates out there that work better than others. And then I like a layout that looks exactly where I find, as a former recruiter, you probably have this too, but you like the resumes that have the right sections, right? You want to see the summary, the skills, the accomplishments, the experience, and then finalize it all off with the credential stuff and volunteer stuff and groups, memberships. So have the relevant information. Don't skimp out on any given section. You don't know which hiring team is looking at what part of the resume the most. And then the biggest one is just clear, succinct, and pragmatic messaging. So your goal is to essentially show them your value. I always say the resume's messaging should show how you make their life easier and why you're the proverbial Tylenol to their pain because of the opening.
I like the way you just put that. I've not heard it put that way before. I need somebody to be the Tylenol to my pain. So accepting resumes now.
Exactly. I mean, that's just it. Hit them at the heartstrings. Pull them where they need to be pulled, and
Exactly.
they'll bring in for an interview.
Well, and let me get your opinion on this, okay? So I get a lot of resumes, and the first thing I do, I want to see your dates of employment right along that right-hand side, all by itself, okay?
Yes,
So you agree with
Mhm.
that. And here's the other
I
mistake that I
do.
see a lot of people make is that they will break down those dates per their progression within a company, making them look like job hoppers. So instead of having the overall range of dates, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I always show succession, and I'm in agreement with you. I keep the dates on the right, and in that case, I would have it, let's say 2010 to present on the far right, and then show the succession, but where the titles go, just put the title and put a parentheses after what those particular dates are, so it doesn't mucky up the overall, your overall trajectory. But it still shows that you have succession. You don't want it
Yes.
to say 2010 to present general manager. They're going to go, well, did you start off that way? Why didn't you get promoted, et cetera? So, you got to still show it, but make those ones. It's kind of hard to say it audio, but showcase it. But yeah, you want it like in on the left side, the title, parentheses, 2020 to present, and then go down with your accomplishments, and then the next title, little parentheses, that date, and go down, right? And then the higher up at the very top, you'll have the company, location, all the way to the right, 2010 to present, the master date.
Yes. And please
Mhm.
justify that tab so that all the dates line up.
Yes.
It's the
Amen.
little things, right?
I
It's the
know
little
it.
things. I can't stand it when you see dates like some over here, some over here, some over here. And that's just, I'm not really that OCD, but I think it's attention to detail, right? And that's the first
It
thing that
is.
you want to come across on your resume is that you have attention to detail.
Yes, that's why misspellings, periods will discount you in some circles. Not all of them, because there are those recruiters that are like, I'll fill in those for this guy or this girl because I got to fill this seat. But yeah, and no over capitalization. That's my biggest one, is capitalizing stuff because you think it's all so important. It's, you stick to what are supposed to be capitalized.
Absolutely. Don't
Or
yell at
nouns.
people. Don't yell. So,
Yeah.
um, So another thing that you mentioned when it comes to resumes is you are a strong believer in brevity. So in fact, you mentioned on your website that candidates, and I agree, only have 7 seconds to catch a hiring manager's attention with their resume. So what are some tips that you can share to help people craft that succinct resume?
Yes, and I'm a believer of this because I feel like when I was a recruiter, you have that first, we just call it 6-7 seconds, but
Hmm.
you just offend. You're starting off with a glance. Does this thing look like it's playing the game, quote unquote? Meaning, is this someone who put a little effort into showing their background? Believe it or not, people are caring about that because, again, how lazy you are will come off on paper if you look at a lazy resume. So you kind of like, okay, this person's playing the game. I see some sections I'm used to. I see some titles that are in the world of that I'm trying to recruit for. Now I'm going to give them the full 2 minutes. Now, what are some red flags? And so you start looking through their work history, their progression. Do they cross off the boxes of my job descriptor needs? Meaning, do they have the right certs or degrees that are mandatory? Have they had any X, Y, and Z type skills experience that are mandatory? And so once you start getting through those, that's that full 2-minute read. If I like the person, then I'm going to pick up the horn and do a 15-minute, maybe even 30-minute, depending, get all the details, try to get their rate, try to get everything that I can, so then I can present it to my hiring manager, who is making the end decision of whether they're going to interview and hire you. So you got to kind of go through this hierarchy of who's looking at you, and starts with the robots and it ends with the hiring team. So I always keep, and this is one of my first advice for how to get their attention is keep it pragmatic. I always say that one of my hashtags on LinkedIn I created was the pragmatic resume. And you got to think of it because there's all these wonky hiring personalities. And not only that, you have people that maybe had a bad day. And so your livelihood of tens of thousands of dollars are at stake by people that probably in some way or shape or form, some of them shouldn't even be responsible for hiring a human being. And they are, and you're like, my goodness. So you gotta be ready for everybody, including the boneheads, lack of a better term. So easy, straightforward, your value as it relates to the role. The number one thing you do is reverse engineer your resume to the role. I love when people are, I don't want to tailor my resume to the roles. It seems like a lot of work. Yeah, well, okay. Do you want to play the game or not? So if you don't have to tailor it to every single production supervisor role, if you're going for production supervisor, but if you want to be an operations manager, I should see when it shows production supervisor, and I should see another resume that says operations manager, because they're two different roles. Mm-hmm. So you got to think of it like, you don't need to do it for every role. We got to do it for every type of role. And so the more you give them, and the more, I always say, the more you narrow in, you zero in and get narrow in terms of your target and niche yourself, the more quality opportunities and interview requests will come your way, rather than the wider the net, the more kind of garbage might make itself through. So be either focused on the role, the industry, or if you can, the lucky ones, both. Reverse engineer, make sure your messaging skills and content are related to that targeted role. Mm-hmm. So job descriptions go. Us recruiters, we go off of job descriptions. I don't know what my hiring managers do half the time and half the day. I don't need to. I just need to know what that person that has that open role needs to do. And then I'll use my best recruiting practices that I was trained on to find that person. Even if I've never understood what a database administrator does, I know how to recruit for one, right? So like you kind of have this macro level of understanding, and then you let the hiring team make up the mind if the nuts and bolts make sense. But reverse engineer, figure out if you can what their needs and pains are because of the opening, and then build your narratives into the resume that reflect your ability to meet those needs, resolve those pains, but be as clear and, again, limited word count as possible. They don't need this thing that's 2 pages, 3 pages long that has no relevance on the bottom half. Absolutely. It needs to all be relevant, right? It's like a screenplay. Every word counts. So reverse engineer.
I really like that you said that. And I will tell you, if I get a resume that is, like a paragraph not broken up, I'm not going to read it. I'm just not going to do it. I want to see bullet points, 1-line bullet points about what you did, so that I can quickly ascertain if you're somebody I want to talk to. Is that 7 seconds versus 2 minutes, right? But if I see a paragraph, you're getting 7 seconds, because
I hate the paragraphs. Whoever started that trend in like the 2000s or like whatever it was, like that little time frame, and I was like, this is a nightmare. How are hiring managers preferring this? But we're all back to bullets, thankfully.
Yes, for the most part. Okay, one more question about resumes. Your opinion, because I'm polling all the certified resume writers. Picture or no picture on the resume?
No picture. Let your LinkedIn be your picture and your digital self. Resume. If you're in Europe, maybe, fine, because that's what they do over there. But in America, no pictures. Don't just give yourself a fair shake. If the hiring team needs to see a photo, that's already questionable.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And my opinion on this is that if you do put your picture on your resume, that could be setting up for some kind of discrimination.
Sure. Absolutely. There's no need. That's kind of like it muckies every single water out there as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
Now you get the people, the crowd, the actors, the real estate salespeople. Okay, this isn't a general rule of thumb for everybody. There are industries where a photo might help. Okay, like real estate, I've heard single-handedly from hiring managers, I like photos. I'm hiring realtors. So, again, it's who your audience is. Mm-hmm. Actors, you have to. It's a mandatory to have a photo because, again, acting.
I'm just talking about average Joes.
Yeah, anybody, if you're not that 95%, there's about 95% of us that don't need it. There's that little small area that I guess might help. But even so, it's probably not mandatory. Even acting, they're going to eventually have you come in if you want to get an agent and do audition in front of them. So by then they're going to see you. Stay away.
Good. I'm glad that you agree with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Absolutely.
So in this day and age, okay, let's say we've got our resumes, we've made it to the hiring process, to the interview, but everything's video. So what are a couple of best practices to consider when conducting a webcam interview?
Great question. So, and I was doing a little research, and there's a lot of articles about that in the last couple of years, obviously. So you want to first, though, the technical stuff should be a no-brainer, but check the Wi-Fi, reset the router if you have to before an important interview, and make sure your Zoom and MS Teams or whatever is functioning and you've practiced the day before with a friend or a family member, neighbor, whatever. Got to go through a quick little, hey, technical, everything's working. Next, make sure the confidence doesn't diminish because it's a Zoom. In fact, I mean, if anything, I would feel I'd have more confidence just because, you're creating your own environment. But again, I moonlight as an actor, so it's probably easier for me to get in that space. But like, if confidence is bred from your knowledge and what you're ready to present to the hiring team. It's not about reacting. Interview should not be like, interviews should be like, I'm prepared. And your best bet is to, again, reverse engineer. Here are 10 job description, or here's one job description with 10 items on there are your tasks. Can you do each of those 10 things? And if so, bake those into the resume as your onus of each of those 10 things. So don't just tell them you could do that task, but show them proofs in the pudding, very matter-of-fact, cause and effect statements that say, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, I did it, but look at this over here. I'll tell you all about it in the resume, during the interview. So I always tell my clients, bake in those narratives to the resume, so then use it as a springboard for the interview. And now you have more confidence because now you have 10 things you want to talk about. And no matter what questions come, you're going to go through all 10 of those, hopefully by the end of it. So you never want to repeat an answer in an interview. Nothing more boring than one project person who just talks about one project the whole interview. If you're graduating school, fine. But if someone who's a professional at this point, you need to stack up your we call it brag books. You need to start stacking your wins in those brag books. Start bringing it all together then on a resume, and then only keeping in stuff that's either operational or relatable or very unique, like words and speeches. But never, don't go in an interview without preparing, and preparing means knowing the job description and how you relate to it. I always say during the interview, you're telling them all about the neat things that went into these projects. So make sure you're just prepared by knowing how you're going to be the one who is going to resolve their pains, make their life easier. And then finally, I like this trick. So right here with this eye, you want to put a little sticky note piece, not a whole one, but just like a little whatever, something up there, not over the eye, but right next to it. And then during the interview, just stare at that sticky note. If you got to look down, perhaps at a project list, perhaps at your resume, perhaps at your closing questions you have prepared, which are the three I always like to have. I call it the interview binder. Have those right in front of you, and you could just kind of look down and then come back up for the answer, but look right at that sticky note. Don't look at the screen of people, or else you won't be looking at them.
You know what? I have never heard anybody say that before. That is a great tip. I'm going to start using that because I do a lot of news interviews over Zoom, and I feel like I'm always like, looking this way, not looking at giving the appearance of creating that eye contact. So that is great piece of advice.
So, thank you for that. Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, sometimes that little green eye doesn't really, you're not used to, kind of, you lose it. So that sticky note tends, bright yellow, you're not going to miss it.
Okay. I'm going to start incorporating that into all my preps that I give my candidates that are going on video interviews. So thank you for that. I might even give you credit for it. We'll see.
Thank you.
I did want to point out that you have over 800 recommendations on LinkedIn. That is really impressive. So how can LinkedIn recommendations help enhance credibility in your job search?
It has helped me. It helps me with closing my sale. I think I use it as my ending kind of thing. I always tell them, hey, 800 recommendations. The reason why is because I like to build long-term relationships and not paywall and nickel and dime clients. I'm always a free sounding board through as life, perpetuity. So I tell them, hey, if you need a quick one-off advice without having to take me away from my day, meaning like a phone call where there's a premium for that. But, so I'm always there to spitball ideas, send them resources for free, or have that kind of, alleviate the road bumps they're encountering on their job hunt. So that's how I've done it. It's just been very good candidate experience driven. I always like to make my clients feel like it's underwhelming, the job hunting process. It shouldn't be something that you're like, what am I doing day one? And day 5, and how do I feel like I'm actually making traction? And so I like to say, well, let's not chicken with our head cut off. Let's be meticulous and baby steps at first. And then when we hit the ground, when we start feeling like we're crawling, then we're going to start feeling like we're running, and we kind of get through this phase and these phases together. So I think it's just this all-encompassing way that I make my clients feel, and then it's good work. I mean, my writing is really sharp, and the way I present my clients. So back it up with the products too. But I think that's pretty much it. I mean, and then being meticulous about being, what is it when you're kind of not like annoying them, but you're just kind of being repetitive about like, hey, can you leave me the recommendation? So I'll like ping them, like, even if it's like a year later, and say, hey, do you mind doing that? So you just got to stick with it too.
Well, I think that's absolutely amazing. And I mean, to get that many of them, I mean, I think I've got quite a few. And I don't think I ask for the recommendation enough. I don't, usually I just get them randomly. So I think I need to start maybe asking for the recommendations because it does. I have had people engage with me because they've read the recommendations of others. But what I really heard you say there about your recommendations was that you show up authentically and you give value first, which is a really big rule with me too. I always want to give value first. And it sounds like you truly care about your people, which that makes all the difference in the world. And I think that would garner you quite a few extra recommendations.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's why I always just say, hey, let's all just get ahead. We're all just trying to go, and the money stuff will, it's like I don't like to be that person where I'm like, hey, you're going to have to pay for this or pay for that. It's like, it's like if you give, they'll reciprocate through referrals, or they'll come back and be a boomerang client, that kind of stuff. So it's just easier business. It's just smarter business. And plus, not only that, it's how I'm built. Like I see some of these prices that my colleagues will charge people, and I'm like, it took me years to get to where I'm at. I'm not even that expensive. So you just got to kind of, again, empathetic, show people are in job hunts with limited resources and funds. You got to kind of, now here's the other thing though, the flip side. I've helped the lady that gave me the sob story on LinkedIn and about her son passing away and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? Hey, I'd be glad to do the resume for you. How about $100? And she was like, oh, and so over the moon. And then she got mad to fill out the questions and yelled. Like she was just like, she was like, I can't fill out these questions. There's like 6 questions, right? I will like my answers first before I do any sort of phone call or deep dive if there needs to be one warranted, because I want black and white so I can CYA. If they come at me and say, I want a project manager resume, I'll say, no, you said operations, see? So I've learned to keep things very black and white with people. But it's like the people that want more for less end up being the biggest headaches, whereas the people who are willing to pay whatever, they're just so easy to work off with. So this lady, she's like, I can't fill out these questions. I said, well, just do your best. I do need those, though, to at least kind of get started. And they're basic. What do you want to do? What's missing from your current resume? Stuff that just needs to be filled in. I can't transcribe dates and titles and roles. And that's no, you got to take 5 minutes to write that stuff out. And I tell her that, and she's like, you're being rude and like this and that. And I never snap back. I clapped back when I was starting my business, and it just doesn't do any good for you. Back when I had young, and I'm like, what are you yelling at me for? But now I'm like, so I block her, put her on my spam list, move on. I refunded her $100, which at that point I had already done enough time with her as a prospect that probably would have paid that. But it's like, look, lady, I'm trying to help you, and you can't just throw me under the bus now because I'm asking you to do a few questions. And it was like such a cordial response to have like, you just got to fill these out. Yeah. Unfortunately, to do the transcription product, it costs $200 for the hour. And I go, that's just my regular charging. And since I offered you a discount, I would appreciate you just handling it via email. It was something, a canned response that I have for this kind of situation. And she was like, you don't know me and this is rude and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you went from $600 resume to $100, and it's still going to throw in the cover letter, and it backfired. So when you give too much, sometimes I find that, like my wife said, she goes, just stop doing that. Just don't do it anymore, because it tends to kind of burn you.
Yeah. Well, and there's absolutely value in what you do. And I don't make placements for free, but I do a lot of stuff around that placement, with the candidates for free that a lot of other recruiters don't do. So I totally get it. So just another quick question. So I know you have thank you letter templates in some of your packages. What kind of strategies, that's the word I was looking for, strategies, should job applicants employ when crafting a thank you letter?
So I would say be cordial and quick, right? Get to the point, thank them for their time. And then always, no matter if it's a thank you letter, whether it's a follow-up message to the recruiter for some sort of information request, always reiterate something that will sell you again. Because anytime you have an opportunity to sell yourself to anyone who's in charge of vetting you during any given process, act on it, right? So thank you for your time. Just wanted to let you know, I remember the 3 biggest components of this role were supply chain, procurement, and inventory. And I just wanted to let you know again that I have, over 25 years in all of those, including process development and implementation, or whatever are going to be some of the big things in that role. Reiterate it, and then if there's something about the meeting, you can quickly throw in one line. Hey, and just to remind you again, I was the one that we had that rapport about the surf lessons with your kids or something, whatever. That will kind of remind them too. So cordial, thank you. The thank you. The quick little want to remind you again, here are the top one skills or achievements you needed that I can do. And then any sort of reminder if they can remember you, if there was a memorable moment, and then sign off. This thing needs to be 3-4 sentences, like move on.
And the one thing I would add to that is have somebody else put a second set of eyes on it.
Good point.
Just because, make sure that you've got the right name on there. I've had that happen, and that your grammar's correct, right? So I love it.
Yes.
This has been amazing information. So now I want to learn a little bit more about you by asking you our VIP questions.
Excellent. Let's do it.
All right. So if you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or people would you take with you?
Oh, this is great. So my wife and my son are 1 and 2 because I can't go anywhere or exist without them, and that's how close I am with them. So it's pretty disgusting, but I love them. And then a supercomputer, because by then we'll have a supercomputer that will give me access to the internet and automated farming equipment. Or automated farming, somehow it does it for you. So I can eat, get our entertainment, and just hang with the 2 people in the world that matter most to me, and we're good. I don't need to be on Earth.
That's beautiful. I love that. So what is one thing you do? What? I'm sorry, I was talking over you. What'd you say?
I hope they'll have automated farming.
Be like that game they used to have on Facebook where you'd go plant your farms and then come back a little bit later and harvest them, and then you'd invite friends to come harvest. Yeah. I got so addicted to that. It's so stupid. So, so what is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
I know it doesn't sound like existential, like I read daily affirmations. I do my affirmations at night before I go to bed, but I would say the first thing I do is pick up my phone and check my leads, because I'm a victim of the lead game still. And so I find that it helps me with success because my inbox isn't as full for later. And now with that, I can access people needing resumes right away. So I got to get in front of them. So I'm a lead checker. And then I just hang with my son all morning until noon, and then I start my day. So I'm lucky and fortunate enough, and I'm a blessing to have that. But I refuse to work when my son's just hanging around the house next to me.
That's amazing. And you're right. You are very fortunate to have that opportunity to do that. So many people don't, right? I was one of those. My kids were in daycare and school the entire time. So, all right. So if your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Okay, this one. So I went with one that was more of less the professional and just more me personal wise, but it's lifelong Cleveland Browns fan and season ticket holder dies day after Browns win the Super Bowl. So I'm assuming I'm going to see one in my lifetime, and it will be probably in the newspaper because, people know I'm a nuts fan by then. But let's just hope I'm that popular by then. Everyone knows I'm a huge Browns fan.
That is awesome. Oh my goodness. So how do people get in touch with you if they need you to write a resume for them?
They can go to jobstickers.com. It's like pot stickers, our favorite food, but job stickers, which was really clever when I first started my business. I thought this is going to just wow the world, and I've stuck with it just because it's easier than my company name. So go to jobstickers.com. That's in my website built in. You'll see my blog as well as, contact information, package information, all the above.
Well, I happen to love that your website, jobstickers.com. I thought it was super clever when you shared it with me the first time. So I would stick it. Don't ever let that go.
No, it's too easy because MJW Careers, some people think it's an N and M, and then they're like, what was the acronym? And it's just like, I learned that, no, keep it simple for quick little, like things like this, right? Yeah. Where you just need it on the fly. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And I was going to say, and I have a little pierogi guy who's holding a resume.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
The joys of business, small business.
Exactly. You got to set yourself apart. That's for sure. That's for sure. And a good resume will help you do that. So Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I have just one last thing to say to you. You are a VIP.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for having me, guys. Oh, so I got something out there from this.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.